Hello and welcome to the Box Angeles Podcast with me, your host. Hi, I'm Mike Elder. It's a pleasure having you here, whether you're listening on your phone or watching on YouTube. I really appreciate you listening to the show. And if you're new to the show, what I do is sit down with creative professionals and I discuss how they navigate show business, whether that's actors, writers, directors, casting directors. In fact, this week's episode is a casting director. It's Robert Ulrich. If you're not familiar with his work, he comes out of the office Ulrich, Kritzer, Dawson, which is a huge TV casting office. They do a ton of shows. He works on, think of every Ryan Murphy show, right? Like Glee, Nip Tuck, American Horror Story. He also does like The Boys, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. Back in the day, it was like CSI and Matlock. Robert's been doing this for a very long time. He's got an Emmy Award. He's got a couple Artios Awards and a pile of nominations to go on top of that. So, given his breadth of experience, this was a really insightful conversation. We talked about the benefits of working for a big office like that. I don't think a lot of casting directors have three main partners at a casting office, so that was interesting to hear his reasoning behind that. We talked about self-tapes versus in-person auditions. It was really interesting to hear. He prefers self-tapes, and I'll let him tell you why, but that was interesting because I feel like a lot of actors don't love self-tapes, especially at this point. We talked about him watching the entirety of auditions, how he's mentoring and fostering the younger casting generation to come up. This is a really, really, really good conversation. He's done a couple podcasts, he said, but never on video. Either way, I think this was a really treat of a conversation we get to hear today. And I tell you what, I think I got a lot out of this in person. I think you're going to get more out of this listening because there's a lot of nuance to what he was saying. And I think this is just an awesome conversation for any actor to listen to, so, or any creative in this business. So without further ado, I don't want to talk anymore. I give you...
Hi, I'm Robert Ulrich.
Hi, Robert. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks for coming down. This really means a lot to me as like a starting out actor who auditions a lot but doesn't necessarily book a lot. It means a lot that somebody like you would come down here and talk to me on a random weekday.
Thanks.
I feel like you've done a few podcasts in the past?
I have, yes. I have never... I don't think ever on camera, but yeah, I've done probably 2 or 3 over the years.
Do you get reached out to a lot to do podcasts and interviews?
Constantly.
And so what, I'm just curious.
What made you decide? Made me decide? Nothing really. It's just like, I know how hard it is. So I try to give back in that way. And it just, if you catch me at a time when I can say I can do it, I'll do it. And I know I committed and then we've gone back and forth for a long time, but, there's really no rhyme or reason, actually. That
makes me feel less special. But
no, but I mean, it's true. I basically try to do it in the same way I do a lot of charity lunches and stuff, just any way I can give back because I'm so busy usually that I don't have a chance to do other kinds of giving back kind of stuff.
I get it. And it's funny too, I was talking to my friend Stevie Nelson. Well, she was on the podcast recently, and I was talking about how like, if I were to ask you to coffee or to do like a general meeting, you probably would say no. I'm going to go on a limb.
Yeah.
But this, there's the weird guise about this where you are like, feel like you're being productive. You're doing something for the day. You're giving back in a general forum. So this is a great, container for this to talk about acting. Whereas like if I asked even my friends to go get coffee and talk about acting,
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
And you mentioned we rescheduled a few times. I thank you for sticking with me. The more you reschedule, the harder it is to get people to commit.
I know.
Like last week, I always call out Ross Lacey on this podcast. I don't know if you know Ross. He's like,
I don't know, but
he's like the preeminent commercial casting guy, and he brought me in last week when we had the schedule. And I was like, oh, Ross, you got me this time.
I pretty much, if I commit to anything, I stick to it. That's just my personality. I'm somebody who begins and ends things, but I might cancel 100 times before I do. Yeah.
I love that. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming down. I've talked to a lot of casting directors, and I think it's so valuable to like hear you guys speak and like hear your side of it because we see you as gatekeepers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And we see you as like the next level to unlock.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at. So the first question I want to ask you, being in the position you're in, is like, as somebody who I alluded to, I auditioned quite a bit. Like this year, I've had 3 TV auditions, which in 3.5 months is pretty good for me,
especially
nowadays. Yeah. And like, so I don't book a lot, but I audition a fair amount. And what I look for as small wins, other than auditions, I think every audition is a win. You have to, obviously. But I look for like repeat customers, like
Well, that's
casting directors bringing me back in. But I'm curious for somebody like you, where you have such a big office and so many shows. Are you consciously bringing people back in, or are you just trying to hold on for dear life going through all the submissions?
no, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think, oh, I'm going to bring this person back in. But to answer or to comment on what you said, I've always said that yes, eventually as an actor, you need to book, obviously, to live. But you should judge if your career's going well, if a casting director is having you back, because that means that they want to hire you. They want you to get a job. And then it's just a question of, time and a million things. I mean, there's so many. Somebody actually getting a job is just such a strange, whimsical thing. But if you're getting called back, then you're doing something right.
Yeah. And you believe that with the volume you're doing, you could, like, if you see a role for, a 30-something-year-old African American female, do you immediately think of a few people that
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes, if I see a specific role, sometimes a lot of people pop to mind. Sometimes nobody pops into my mind. And then obviously we go through every single submission, everyone, always. And that's gotten out of control since the strike. I mean, before the strike, I can remember commenting, or maybe even before COVID, that it was like, if we had a role, we were getting to like 2,000 or 3,000 auditions. And I said, that's insane. On the last 2 roles I've done for Gen V, we have gotten over 7,000 submissions per role.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's insane, actually. But we go through every submission, and then it's going to lists and previous auditions, and that's how we come up with who we bring in.
Well, that's why I'm curious, like, if you do consciously bring the same people, because at that point it feels like you're just trying to hold on for dear life, and you can easily get overwhelmed.
In episodic television, it goes at such a pace. It's very different than that. There is a certain element of just holding on and trying to get it done and doing a great job. That's just the truth, because it goes so fast. And I've had shows in the past where we would get the script act by act, or, we'd be casting, the day before on something, we'd get we got a series regular role in Glee once. We had 2 days to cast it. So there is that time element. I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
But when you go through, whatever, for those 7,000 submissions you got, you bring in what, 80, or you get like 80 self-tapes, 100 self-tapes?
Well, the difference is, and this is why when I'm kind of jumping all around, but when COVID happened and everything went by Zoom, where there was no in-person auditions, we held on to our office for a year and then gave it up. When that happened, I was very opposed. I thought it would never work. I thought it was the worst idea ever. The truth is, I think it works so well that I can't imagine it ever going back. But it isn't just the convenience for the casting directors and the actors who used to have to drive all over town and, and wait in a room for 3 hours. I mean, it was just crazy. But it's also an opportunity to see so many more people. So in those days, you might do a few pre-reads, and then you'd bring in 6 to 8 people usually per role.
Oh, that's it?
Oh, yeah. And producers people did not want to see. Like, I can remember when, of course, producers were rarely in the rooms even at that point, but they were for certain things. But I can remember one time we brought 12 and somebody getting very upset, So, but now we often, I mean, this is no lie, we'll set up, I'm terrible about it. I'll set up 150 people per role, and we'll watch all those tapes.
Okay, so
it's given so many more people opportunities.
Which I love.
Especially people starting out.
Which I love. So of those 150, when you're watching those, though, do you think like, oh, I really like this person. They're not great for this, but I'm going to remember them going forward? Or is that how you approach the idea of bringing people back?
Yes.
Like, it just starts from there? Or do you like toggle a switch remember them?
Starts from there. And luckily at this point, my memory's still pretty good with actors. So I do just remember, I just remember people. But we also have, like I said, we have lists and folders on our computer and everything for people to keep in mind. Yeah.
And so what do those lists and folders entail, and how does one get in those? Is it just something
Well, I mean, it just, like you said, if I see somebody and I think, I want to keep in mind, then they go into a certain folder.
Okay. Do you have a bad folder?
No, never.
You don't have a naughty folder?
We don't have a bad folder. I promise you, ever. First of all, I was an actor. My wife's an actor. I'm probably too much on the actor side most of the time, because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to get going. I know how hard it is to maintain any kind of positivity and to feel good to continue feeling good about yourself. It's hard.
I get that, but if I was you and you brought in somebody once and they messed up something like very basic, and then you brought them in again and they messed up something very basic.
Yes, continues.
I feel like I would be like, okay, I can't waste my time.
Yeah, but I would
6,999.
I would remember them.
Okay.
To be honest, I
so
don't put them in a folder.
The naughty list is upstairs.
Yeah, but I never hold an audition against somebody. But if it was ever, and if it was multiple auditions, yes.
I just put this in my head. I'm now comparing casting directors in my head to Santa Claus. I feel like you're just always, you see everything, know everything, and you have a long list of people on both the good and
Maybe.
So back to my initial question. I feel like I should consider it a win when I get brought back in again.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, or it could be, but I shouldn't think, because I don't know why I was thinking that. Oh, I know why, because I had a soap opera audition last week, and it was the 4th year in a row they brought me in for this.
Well, that means he likes, who is it?
It's Teschner.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, he must really like me. And then I was like, well, what if he's getting 7,000 submissions? Maybe he just thinks I'm...
No, he would go back and whatever the part was, he'd either remember you or he'd look at, or remember you just from the submission, or he'd look at his previous lists or auditions and say, oh, he was great for that role and this similar role, whatever,
Okay, I love that. Thanks for making
Oh, no, that's true.
This podcast was worth it already.
Well, that is true.
Back to your comment about you don't think we're going to go back to in person. Can I ask you about that? Why do you think that is? Do you guys, obviously it's a benefit to you guys, but do you think there's anything lacking? Because I've talked to a lot of actors and it's like, I think the biggest thing we miss is that in-room feedback, right? Because I'll send in a tape and I'll not hear anything. Yeah. And even for that soap opera, it was like a page and a half, 2 pages. And I was like, did I do good? Did I do bad? Was I completely off pace? Like in a room, you can move me and adjust me, and then I can feel leaving.
That is the only negative, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think the positive is that when we could only bring in so many people per role, then it was scarier to take chances, Now so it's giving so many new people and new actors opportunities I don't think they realize. And then I think also that what the business had become by the end, the days of being in a room with a producer and director giving you notes was almost over. And often when actors would go in, they were just going into a room, reading into a camera with an assistant. Not that the assistant didn't give feedback, but you weren't getting the casting director half the time anyway.
Yeah.
But that is, to me, the only negative, because I think, and I guess maybe building the in-person camaraderie, like I said, I miss an office so much. And my favorite part was having, was the interaction with the actors, because that was my favorite. That has always been my favorite part of the job, more than the business side, whatever, is just meeting the people. I'm just curious about, if I talk to an Uber driver, one of those irritating people that I'm just curious about. I have a terrible case of curiosity. So I do miss that. But I do think that that not getting the feedback is an issue, and because then your audition generally becomes about just making a choice and hoping that you've made the right choice.
Yeah.
However, as a casting director, if we see something that we like in that, we'll have you go back on tape with notes. And so it ultimately isn't that different, I think, but I do think that is the only issue that is kind of, not as good.
How often do you do that though? Because I was talking to Michael Sanford, who's a commercial guy, a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Yeah, if we have notes and we have time, we'll send feedback and ask."
Yeah,
them
we do that. Oh, for sure.
You do that a fair amount, or is it
fair? I mean, a fair amount, because we end up usually in that volume of auditions that we set up. And like I said, we set up so many people are like, I can't believe you're setting up 200 people for 2 lines, you know. But I do.
Yeah.
Much to the dismay of my people that work with me often. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Notes?
Yeah, notes.
You're sending out notes back.
Yeah,
to the
but I'd say that, you end up having so many people that are good that it isn't on a regular basis. But yeah, occasionally we do that.
So that's never happened to me, I should assume I was on the right track with my audition.
Yeah, yes.
Would you send notes if they were completely far off, they would send notes?
Well,
would you send notes if
depend.
they were, would you ever send like a, you guys nailed this, but you weren't right for it?
No, we did. No, there's not time.
Okay.
Unfortunately, to give there just isn't time in episodic television to give feedback or
Positive feedback.
or any feedback, because ultimately I guarantee, and I was an actor, then you'd say, well, why was I good? Well, blah, blah, blah. It opens up a conversation that is not only too time consuming, but impossible to have, because then you become an acting teacher or, it's just impossible. I think feedback is generally, and I've always felt this way, pretty silly. It's like you call and used to be, you'd get an assistant that would say, oh, they did great. We just want it in a different way. And usually that was the truth, because most actors, I believe, who are auditioning, who have done any amount of work, are good. It's just a question then of, are they incredible in this role? I don't personally see very many what I would say bad auditions. That's just me.
Yeah.
I think people are usually good, and then they either are not right or not as appropriate or as good as somebody else.
Yeah. You mentioned like going into the room, we would often see assistants. And you implied that then you're watching all the cell tapes. So the casting directors at your guys' office are watching every.
Well, that was in the olden days, but yes, now in the olden days that was when people would go into offices. But yes, we watch every single.
The casting director does now, not the assistant.
No, the casting director. So that's even probably better too.
Yeah. Well, that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah. Because now, before I would watch the tapes that the assistants did. The assistants wouldn't weed out. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't have that many times that I can remember ever not being in the room. But I do know many, many actors who said they would go in and it was just assistants. I mean, many actors.
Got it.
But if I wasn't in the room, I still would watch every tape.
Yeah. Got it. So let me
The assistants weren't weeding out the people for me. They were just doing the job so that we could do something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've interviewed so many casting directors, but I'm trying to think if any have been in a big, like, you're in a trio at UKD, Ulrich, Kritzer, Dawson.
Kritzer,
I know I had like Sibby Kirchgesser and Dorian Frankel on. They were together at one point, but like for the most part, I think that's independent casting directors. So can you tell me like the benefit of coming together as a group?
Well, I don't even know for a fact, but I know for years that we were I'm talking too loud.
No, you're good. You're good. If I look away, it's nothing to do with you. It's just to make sure everything's good.
The thing going crazy.
It's tricky doing a podcast as yourself because you're the editor, the producer, everything at once. So.
For years, we were the only cast directors that were 3 people, I think. And I don't know if we still are. I have no idea. But that wasn't by design. That was just when Eric and I formed our company when we left Reuben Cannon. It was just the 2 of us. And we called Carol Kritzer, who'd worked with us, and she was working at ICM as I think in those days, a secretary. And she left ICM and came to be our assistant. And then obviously she was so good, she became our associate. And then as the years developed, we're like, well, this is crazy. Carol's incredible and not only one of our best friends, but she's casting so much. She became our partner. So we didn't set out to have 3 people. And at the beginning, and you're talking about the dark ages, we would go on interviews together, the three of us. And then we quickly learned that was not a good thing.
Interviews to get jobs?
To get jobs, because in those days we interviewed for almost every job. And we quickly learned that was not a positive thing. So then Eric and I interviewed together for years. And then we learned that was not a positive thing, because I think it always confused the people auditioning us, because they'd wonder how it worked. And generally, probably 90% of the time, you wouldn't get Eric and me, you would get one of us.
Right.
So we stopped doing that, yeah. So
what is the benefit of being
the benefit, I'm saying the benefit wasn't by design. But I always told people, and I do believe this was true, especially when we were all in office together, that I used to say, even if you're just getting me, you're getting three brains, because we'd have meetings and we'd say, oh, did you meet so-and-so? Or I met so-and-so, did you see this actor coming into town? I just saw this show. So you're getting three different opinions instead of one, and so that was the benefit for all those years.
A broader breadth of knowledge. Yeah, that makes sense. But it sounds like there are drawbacks then too to it. Because
there weren't. I don't think there are any drawbacks.
Oh no.
But the drawback was until we navigated how to figure out the interview process. That was probably a drawback. We probably lost some jobs because it was the two of us or the three of us.
Yeah, and I love that you, for a moment, referenced it as auditioning, which I love, because a lot of actors don't think of casting directors having to go out and find work, and then
I just went in an
falls
interview.
on their lap.
I hardly ever have interviews. I mean, not like Great Me, but I mean, I've gotten to a point where I generally don't interview for anything anymore. I just get offered, like actors at a certain point. But I just had an interview a couple weeks ago that I didn't get.
Oh, no.
And that was like, whoa. Yeah. So, I mean, it's still, yeah.
Times is tough.
Times are tough. Yeah.
So you mentioned the breakout of work. That was a question I wanted to ask you about. Like, how do you guys divide up who gets what then? Like, is there just like an order that
you end up making relationships? We made relationships very early on with our own people. And they come, and we've been so lucky that I think almost everyone, I know that I can speak for myself, that I've ever worked with has asked me to do something else. And some of those have asked me several times, and when I've been able to do it several times, then they move on and I don't work with them again. But so it's relationships. I've been very fortunate to develop relationships with people like Eric Kripke and Gail Berman, who are wonderful and have become friends and continue to employ me. And they do so much work that's what happens. And then obviously for 25 years, Ryan Murphy kept us employed. So you're and then occasionally, like in the last one I didn't get, I was reached out to by Amazon, and Sharon Klein through the years would come to me with pilots every year. So it's studio execs and producers that, it's not like you hear about something. I mean, I remember many, many years ago, we were sitting in our office, and in those days we got a physical physical variety that we held in our hands. And on the cover was that James Cameron, who hadn't done anything since Titanic, I don't believe, was doing his first television series. And I was a giant fan of Titanic. And I'm like, oh, I would love to get that. I'll never get that. I would love. And it was the craziest thing. Like 2 minutes later, the phone rang. And somebody that I'd worked with on a show called The Birds of Paradise, Chick Egley, asked me if I wanted to come interview. And I interviewed and got it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was very fun. Very fun.
So if I come to UKD with the Mike Elder Untitled TV project, how, and I say I want you guys, who ends up getting to be the casting director?
Whoever you come to. I mean,
if I just came to you guys broadly, there's not like.
Well, then it would depend on who didn't have
work going on
much at the time, or there'd be those kind of things like, and obviously all three of us, I think, have gravitated toward different kinds of things,
Sure.
So it would just be, I mean, even though Eric was initially offered Glee by Ryan, because I hadn't really worked with Ryan. I'd done one episode of Popular when Eric was out of town, a network test, and sat in on one episode of Nip Tuck, and that was it. So I didn't know Ryan at all. But I grew up doing musicals, and I love musicals. So, because of Glee, generally now, if somebody had a musical project, they would come to me, probably of the three of us, and they have. Although I think somebody just came to Carol with one not long ago.
So you guys kind of have your swim lanes. But you guys are all credited, right?
Yes, we all get credited.
So you don't have to answer this question, but do you guys split the revenue then equally at the company?
That's all. I mean, I probably shouldn't answer that, but it's we've through the years modified how it works.
It's an ever-evolving revenue share process.
Yeah. But I'll tell you something to show what a great partnership we have and what great friends we are. We never had a contract.
Oh, that's cool.
That's how much we trusted each other. I mean, everything.
It's not smart, but it's cool.
It's not smart, but it's cool. But it's worked for almost 40 years, however many years we've been in business.
You had asked me if I've come in for you guys beforehand, before we started. But yeah, I've come in twice for Carol, for, I believe, The Rookie and Station 19.
Oh, so in the last several years.
Yeah, it was 22, 21. I think.
Oh, cool. Did you go? Was that?
No, that was self-tapes. Which is interesting because, to your point earlier, I feel like I've gotten a lot of opportunities as a result of self-tapes. But I was going to ask you, how does somebody get in front of you guys, like an actor? I was texting my friend Brandon Sornberger last night about you coming on, and he was like, I've been in LA for X years. He's done a bunch of shows. He's never been in for you guys.
Well, I mean, that's a tough thing.
How do new faces get in front of you?
We look at it like, We've had this conversation internally, the three of us, through the years, because we see, I believe, I mean, I can't say more actors than anyone else, but the volume of people I know personally that I've set up, which people have said is crazy. And the new people, but there's just so many actors. It's an impossibility to see or know every actor. Any cast writer that can say that they know every actor, that is insane because there's so much product. And I watch way too much TV. And, there's continually people that I don't know. And then I look them up and learn about them. But, so I don't know.
There's not an obvious way.
There's not an obvious
postcards obviously don't work anymore.
Well, postcards,
live shows, you're not going to go.
No, live shows is probably the best thing. Yeah.
So if I had a live show coming up,
and I could go,
but sorry, let me double click on that. How do I then get that in front of you? Am I supposed to email you? You don't want to.
Oh, we get. You don't. I don't want to, but we do get 10. I mean, I have so many emails. Constantly.
And if it just happens to be you're free that day, maybe you will go.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of what it is. That's what it is. It's like I mean, I probably don't go to enough I don't go to enough theater in LA. I probably go to much more theater in New York. But however, I do go to theater in LA, and I go to Little Theater, and I go to, I do. So I do. And so that just becomes, if it's an actor that I know, obviously, or if it's an actor that has reached out to me and something about the email caught my eye, or if it's a subject matter or a play or performance, yes. So. And I know there are casting directors that go to so much theater.
Right. So you guys don't have these emails are coming directly to you, or do you guys have a general
Unfortunately,
casting?
they're coming. I think I'm going to change that. My wife keeps saying, this is crazy, Robert, because my emails are all my personal and all my work, and I'm not.
That's blurry, yeah.
It's crazy, and I'm somebody, the way my father raised me, that goes through all my emails. I try to do it every day, but I definitely do it every week. And like last night, I had, 100 yesterday or something. I mean, I get thousands.
Wow.
But I had 100 yesterday, and I got it down to 2 last night. I was just the happiest person.
Is it mostly new actors that are reaching out to you? No,
it's everything. It's everything. And then often what I do is send those emails off to my staff, because it's often, they hate it. It's like, yes, I clean up my inbox and then fill up their inbox. But no, it's everything. producers and directors and everybody emailing.
Yeah, it's such a crazy world. As you're talking about this, I'm just trying to think, how can somebody stand out in a world where everyone's competing for somebody like your attention? It's just like
It's very hard. My advice is make your own thing somehow. And I've done it. I mean, I did it with friends. I produced 3 movies. And I'm doing a short next week or 2 weeks, and I'm in the process of producing 4 movies right now. I kind of opened up a little company called Stay Relevant with a friend, and that's also been so fun, not financially good at all. In fact, draining financially, but really,
just like this podcast.
But yeah, really, but really fun and really, creatively fulfilling. But so I know it can be done to create your own thing, and it's not easy. It's so hard. It's just as hard. I think doing this little short is as hard as doing the movies I've done. I mean, It's insane.
It's because the time. It's the same amount of time
and the money. Yeah. Things do cost money, but that is my advice: is to either write something for yourself, get cast in something, do local theater. You have to do more than just audition. And I think more than ever, an actor has to, just kind of create their own future, really.
Yeah. So if somebody were to make their own content, are you thinking in general, like, somebody's going to see it? Or are you thinking, like, when you do make something like that, then send that off to, like, come to casting with something to offer?
Exactly.
Kind of
that, and somebody's going to see it, both things. I mean, you might get in a festival that a cast director's at. You might, yeah.
Yeah.
And also I was going to say, back with the theater thing, is that I have a staff, obviously, and my assistant in particular goes to so much theater. And then he'll see somebody and he'll say, you see this person, or, so it really is about your team as well as just you.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what do you find personally is the best sort of breeding ground for talent? Do you have an opinion on this now that that you said that? Like, do you think theater background's better than a college degree? Do you think improv's better than?
I don't think any of it is better. I think that it's whatever works for you. I look at some of my favorite actors through the years, stars, and there are those that are, very trained, and there are those that have done nothing but learn on set.
Yeah.
And I don't think one is a better actor than the other. I mean, there's that famous story, and I'll probably get it wrong, with Dawson Hoffman and Sir Laurence Olivier, arguably 2 of the best actors of that time, probably arguably 2 of the best actors of all time. And they were doing Marathon Man, and Dustin Hoffman had stayed up for days. Have you heard this? Like, to prepare for the scene where Laurence Olivier, playing the Nazi, was going to drill him without Novocaine and torture him, and he didn't want to get any sleep. And Laurence Olivier said to him, my dear boy, why do you consider acting? And it doesn't mean that Laurence Olivier was better or worse than Dustin Hoffman. They just had 2 different ways of doing things, And there's the actors that do everything from within, and there's the actors that do everything externally, that put on a piece of clothing, and then that affects their performance, or the actors who do both. But I was somebody who did theater and studied always in New York. I studied at Uta Hagen's studio. Then I studied with a very up-and-coming, very cool, who did a lot of trained a lot of big people, an acting teacher named Bob McAndrew. I say with Shirley Knight, who'd been a 2-time Oscar nominee. I really studied, and I do think for me it helped, but I don't think it has any. I always advise actors to get into acting class in LA and to be careful, because there are so many incredible teachers, and then there's some teachers that I think can get kind of emotionally abusive, but to investigate them. And I'm very pro acting class, don't get me wrong, but the main reason I'm pro it, more than the acting class, is you're suddenly with a group of other people who are like you.
Yeah.
And so you can have conversations and you can hear things. And so it's a way to network. It's a way to make friends. It's a way to, LA can be, I think, unlike New York, LA can be very isolating.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so
I don't disagree. And that goes back to what I said about coffee earlier. A lot of people aren't going to go out and want to get coffee and talk about acting. But in an acting class, you're going to meet a lot of people that before and after want to talk about
exactly.
acting.
And I think it's a really good thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You mentioned you have some teachers you like. Can you speak on
Well, what's
LA
terrible
acting
is I
teachers that you
used
like?
to know so many acting teachers because my wife, like I said, is an actress and an actor. And
She still is?
well, she is. I mean, she
Dabbles.
she by choice now dabbles because she had an extremely successful career. I mean, she was under contract to NBC as a young woman. She had her own series. She did movies.
Wait, who's your wife?
Her name's Kim Johnson Ulrich. You might not know her, but she did. If you look her up, she has more credits than almost any actor because there was a period of time where she booked almost every audition she went on. It was a joke, and so she
I should interview her.
Oh no, she's fascinating, and during the course of all that,
Why
time,
am I interviewing you?
I know exactly. During the course that she'd know more about it. During the course of that time, she ended up doing 2 soap operas. She did As the World Turns with Marissa Tomei, Julianne Moore, Meg Ryan, on and on and on. She did that for 2 years, and then she left. They did not want her to leave, but that's when she went under contract to NBC. We moved to LA, and then she did Passions for 9 years.
Damn.
So she's
wasn't the Pink Ranger Kim Johnson? Do you know the Power Ranger?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't. I mean, I don't know if that was. I don't know. But anyways, she's Kim Ulrich most of the time. When her father passed away, she took on the middle name. So sometimes she's credited as Kim Ulrich. Sometimes she's credited as Kim Johnson Ulrich.
But back to the teachers. Do you have any now?
So at that
you
time,
think of?
the only acting teacher that I've been close to in the last 15, 20 years or 15 years probably, maybe only 10 years, is Lee Kilton Smith. And she's an incredible acting teacher. So many of my friends studied with her. I have referred her to jobs, and she's gotten them where she's been, because she's also an on-set coach for people. And she's done, big Casey Affleck and Jennifer Aniston. I mean, she's been a major coach she recently was on set for the True Detective with Jodie Foster.
Sure.
And yeah.
Cool.
So she's a wonderful person. I've spoken for her class several times in person. And she's just a good person who has coached a lot of people to successful careers.
We'll look her up.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a few times you were an actor. At what age did you switch from acting to casting, and what was the impetus for that?
Well, from a kid, I wanted to be an actor, but I also, from before I could even write, before I could write cursive, when I was that young, when I could only print, I wrote my first play, and
oh wow!
I wrote plays. I would adapt books into screenplays. I shot movies on 16 millimeter in those days, and I often think if I had just not decided to be an actor, I would probably be a very successful director or editor, because I love editing too. I used to cut my own film with 16 millimeter.
I shot a drama scene last week to add to my reel, and if you would edit it, I would really appreciate it. I hate it. It's so much work.
I know my wife she thinks it's crazy that I love it. I can watch something over and over and over. I can watch a movie 100 times. I'm that person. But anyway, I got so off on my.
Sorry, you were always acting. You were always.
Oh yes, I was always doing that, and I probably should have not been an actor. But I mean, without going, I kind of tried to steer away from it. I became an English major in college, and I was even thinking of becoming a dentist, which is so crazy to me. And I think that was crazy. And in college, I went with my fraternity friends to visit a set where everybody got to be an extra for a day. And I got chosen to be Burt Reynolds' stand-in.
Whoa.
Excuse me, and that was fun.
What college was this?
The college was University of the Pacific in Stockton, but the movie was being shot in a little kind of country area called Warnerville.
Cool.
And like 30 or 40 minutes from Stockton. And so my last 6 weeks of college ended up becoming not going to class, but having to graduate with a blank diploma and going to summer school. But I realized during that this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm stupid to think it's not what I want to do. And I met a girl, Margie Dale, who was a training assistant director. She convinced me to move to LA. That did not prove successful. And I mean, I was like an extra in a couple of big movies, and I, did hardly anything. And I got a job as a magician in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at a theme park. And I was not a magician.
That was a twist.
At all. And they were doing West Side Story in my hometown, Modesto.
Wait, sidebar. At Hershey, I feel like I could be a magician too. See this chocolate? Watch it disappear.
Well, exactly. Well, exactly. And I didn't end up doing it, but that is funny. So I decided I would go home to Modesto and audition for West Side Story. And if I got Tony, then I would not go to Hershey, Pennsylvania. So I did, and that brought me back to Modesto. And
just
then,
like in a local theater?
In a local theater, but a really, really great local theater.
Okay.
And then during that period after that, I did audition for this thing called All-American College Singers at Disneyland. That brought me to LA for a summer, and I performed.
That's a good gig.
That was good. It was like the Glee Project, which I was on. There was auditions in 27 cities, 13 states. They picked 6 boys and 6 girls, and I was one of the
good for
guys.
you.
Yes,
wow.
That was fun. So I did that. Came back from that, thought, what am I going to do? Sorry, this is a long way to get to that answer.
No, I like it.
And I decided to go back to school and get my master's in English so that I could fall back on teaching if I was a loser actor. So I did that.
Oh, no.
And during my master's program, they let me create my own program, which was an English degree, but with an emphasis on film and theater. So I got to direct for my thesis as well as write a thesis. Cool. And it was on Cat and Hot Tin Roof, so I directed Cat and Hot Tin Roof. So when that ended, I moved to New York to be an actor. And I was a very unsuccessful actor. And my wife, who I then dated bicoastally, when we got married and she moved there, she became very successful immediately. She began modeling, and then, ABC was after, NBC was after, and then she got on As the World Turns, and worked before that too. But anyway, so I was turning 30, and I began to go, oh, I am really a loser. Like, I have no career. And I had to really sit down, much with my wife's help, and think that, what is my passion? Because you have to be so passionate about being an actor. And I realized that my passion was about the business. So a friend of mine who's now a teacher at USC and was a very... USC? I believe it's USC. Or UCLA. USC, I believe. He's a very successful... Rob Schiller, he was a successful television director. He said, Robert, your life is not over at 30. So he got me a job as a stage manager of a play. He was a stage manager of television at that point. And my friend, Margaret Rose Rubenstein, who'd grown up with me, was a professional stage manager too. And I'm like, Margaret, I don't know. I was the worst, as an actor, I was the worst person. I would leave this. I didn't do anything. I didn't even talk to the stage manager hardly. And so she came, and on earphones, I acted my way through being a stage manager. And she would tell me, say this, say that. And I did the most incredible job that they wanted, that I came to LA as a stage manager on a show that fell apart immediately. And I went to dinner with my wife and her manager at the time, and his wife was Pam Dixon, who's a big casting director. And she was getting ready to start a big miniseries, and she was looking for an associate. So I went home that night. I said to Kim, do you think it's weird if I interview for this job? And she said, no. So I did. I got it the very first day. Pam realized I had no idea what I was doing. She said, I can keep you on for pennies as an assistant. And I said, yes. So I did that. And so I completely kind of fell out of being an actor. It wasn't really a decision. I mean, in fact, when I came to LA, at the time, I sent out 100 pictures and resumes, and I was union. I was I mean, I was SAG and Equity. I was handsome. I was, I had decent credits, and not one person, not one agency called me in. And I thought, well, that's God telling me this is not your career. So I am.
I feel like God's telling me something too.
No. But I really was not having any success. And I also discovered that I was spending most of my time happily being my wife's manager. Like I was doing all of her stuff and enjoying all her successes, and that I didn't need to, the acting was just not for me. So anyway, so that's how and then when the job with Pam ended, I went to PR for a while, and I ended up getting a job with Ruben Cannon. I think Pam suggested me to meet with his right-hand person. I met with Ruben, and that was awesome. And that's how my career started.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I love that you say you were SAG and all this, and you had some decent credits. I wasn't successful at all. Like that, everything you listed prior to that
not.
sounds
well, I don't think I was a very good actor, to be honest. I think I was a very good classroom actor, but I was such a bad auditioner. I would get so nervous, and so I just don't think that it was for me.
Well, it's a different auditioning is such a different skill set, and that's why I hate acting classes out here, because I want audition classes.
I know. Well, they're good.
Those are more important to me
I
than
agree.
like a scene study. What am I going to do with a scene study?
Yeah. No, I mean, I
audition a lot.
I think there's importance to that too, but I definitely think that audition classes are good. So.
Do you think self-tapes would have been beneficial to you then if you were such a nervous auditioner?
Oh, 100%.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a funny story. I was doing a comedy called The Gail O'Grady Pilot, a sitcom. And I was not a great actor, but I was an incredible reader. I mean, in days when I would read with the actors, I think I was a really, really good reader. I think that if I was an actor now, which I have no desire to be, I would be a great actor, because the nerves are gone, and it was all about the nerves with me. So anyway, I would read with this scene every day with the actors, and every day the producers would laugh at me every day. So finally, one of the producers said, "Let's just give Robert that part. The small part that was reading with the bigger part." And he said, "He's so funny." And I could see one producer see the fear in my eyes. And that producer said, "Well, let's just have him audition." Now, I'd done this line 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The second I had to do it as an audition, it was so bad, and they just kind of changed the subject, and that was it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, I was nervous auditioner. Terrible.
Oh, no.
I was a terrible, terrible, nervous public speaker.
Oh, no.
Until I was on this show called The Glee Project, and it was crazy. Like, I could have really crashed and burned on that. I didn't know I was going to be on it. I'd cast it. And I showed up one day, and they're like, "Okay, well, you're going to do this." And I go, "What do you mean I'm going to do this?" Nobody had ever mentioned that you're on the show. And it was shot 5 days a week. I work 4 days a week. I was majorly on the show. And so...
kind of forced your hand a little bit.
The first day out there, my Darren Criss was the guest mentor, and he is a friend. And he made me feel so comfortable. And it just clicked. And from that moment on, I swear I could step on in the Academy Award stage and I could talk to 1 billion people. I don't get any nerves. It's the weirdest thing. But prior to that, it was a disaster.
Debilitating.
Yeah, it was.
You mentioned you have a staff. How's your staff organized? Do you have a number of associates per casting director, a number of assistants per casting director?
Generally, on a project, you get an associate and an assistant. That's the way it is. So I have my associate and assistant, and any time that I can get them more jobs, more than one job, because nobody makes a lot of money in casting, I do. So they're on all my projects. Now, when the strike happened, my assistant unfortunately had to take another job because I didn't come back to a job. I came back to the universe of The Boys and Gen V, where I have a different associate, and my associate in general is my assistant on that. So anyway.
So you have a few different associates and a few different assistants.
Well, I have two associates and two assistants. one is who's both. Yeah.
Got it.
Associate and assistant.
Do you guys negotiate because this is fascinating to me. Associates have like a minimum, right?
Yes.
In the agreement, but casting directors don't. So
No.
do you guys at UKD have like a minimum you'll do a job for?
Well,
or
yes.
is it based on the project?
It's based on our years of success, and it's based on the fact that we are very fortunately, luckily, in the higher, because there's really only a few prices that, it's not like there's a there's not like there's 100 different things people get paid. There's basically like 2 or 3. And we're in the highest one, and I just won't do it if I don't get paid that, because I've been doing this long enough to get that.
Right.
know?
Yeah. Got it. Do you at all like try to mentor your associates and assistants and like bring them up?
Yes.
Because I know I've heard this from a lot of casting directors. Like there's sort of a dearth of dearth is not the right word. There's a number of jobs, and at the top it's kind of like acting. Like at the bottom you're kind of scrounging for scraps a little bit, and it seems like a lot of casting associates when they jump to casting directors struggle to find work right away. Do you guys work on helping them like navigate into that new world and that newer generation of
I
casting?
think that our office is known for how many people have worked for us that have gone on to successful casting careers. It's more difficult since the strike. It's more difficult for anyone to get work. So those newer casting directors are finding it much, much harder. I mean, it's just sad. It's just the way it is. Yeah, it's a tough time in all honesty, for new casting directors to break in, because there's so many fewer jobs. So people are going to the people they're comfortable with. That's just what's happening, and that's hard.
And studios tend to like have their person that they want to go to no matter what, right?
Yeah, but you usually are hired. I mean, you're hired by the studio, but you usually get the job
from the producer.
producers.
Yeah. Do you ever like, if you're like overwhelmed at the moment with 7 Ryan Murphy shows or however many Ryan's working on time, do you recommend like, hey Ryan, I'm stacked right now, we're busy? Do you like say go to this person that used to work for me and is really great?
I always recommend people that used to go for me in the past. Right now I'm looking for jobs myself. Right, yeah. But yeah, no, I always have recommended people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, do you have any advice for like people that are trying to get into casting, like how to start navigating? Oh no.
It's very hard. I think getting into casting right now might be harder than getting into
acting.
I mean, it's really hard. Yeah, very, very hard.
So don't get into casting.
Well, I don't want to say that, but it's very difficult. I mean, it's such a crazy business that I never encourage or discourage anyone, because there's an exception to every rule. There's the person who you think would be the least likely person to get an acting job can be up for an Oscar next year. I mean, it's that kind of business, which is why everyone hangs in there.
Yeah.
Because there's always the exception, because there's really no right or wrong about anything in the business, and it's so subjective. So, yeah. That's
the tricky thing, too, with casting is, and maybe I'm wrong, but like for acting, you were like, the advice is go make your own stuff. Casting, you could make your own stuff, but that's more work than it's worth to just get a credit to cast.
Casting, you have to be just incredibly driven and motivated. I mean, when I hired my assistant, who now is working on Shrinking, Daniel Schwab.
He's the casting director on Shrinking?
No, he's assistant to them now.
I just had an audition for Shrinking.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't think I was supposed to say that. But.
Okay, I'll talk to. I mean, because Daniel is still working with me on projects that I'm producing, in his spare time. Because Daniel will make the time if it's 2 a.m. or whatever, because he's working really hard on Shrinking. I don't want to, but so he had to leave me because I had no work when I came back for him in January. But as an example, my casting assistant was leaving. And so I did interviews interviewed a bunch of people. And at the time I thought, I'm just going to make my life easy. So I went with somebody who'd been a casting director and was so overqualified. And this is before COVID. And then that very day she was supposed to start, she got a casting director job and couldn't be an associate. So that was great. And so I'd interviewed a bunch of people, and the person who I'd interviewed who had no experience was Daniel. But I really liked him. And I knew, and he was so smart. And so he beat out all the casting assistants with experience. But what I was going to say is Daniel's the perfect example of somebody who reads up on everything, goes to everything. He went to the Juilliard showcase the other night. He's been in all the union meetings about possibly having assistants unionized. I mean, he is such a go-getter and does so much homework that's the only way I think that someone can start anew, is just be so knowledgeable and well, now he has experience, but I'm talking about somebody starting out. He was already so knowledgeable. He had already done all his homework. It's like the even though he hadn't had a casting job, the experience and the knowledge he had made me realize that he could do it. So that's what I would say to people that are casting assistants starting out. Just, be the best at whatever you're doing at the time, but really learn about show business so that so that's what.
Do you guys ever do we mentioned acting classes? Do you ever lead like a casting workshop for casting?
Not
or do you ever
really.
do like a Q&A for the CSA or anything like that?
I've done
workshops
through the years. I have done Q&As for sure, but not on a regular basis. But I've done them for all over town and on Zoom, and I'm doing one actually for a college with a friend of mine who's a director, Richard Israel, who I just did a musical I'm producing and casting with, and met him, and I'm doing that in a week.
That's cool.
So I still do a lot of those kind of Q&A things, but
That's cool. So many casting directors have been so gracious with their time doing my podcast, and I'm always trying to look out for all of them. And
you mentioned Sibby. I love Sibby.
Oh, so many. Sibby, Dory, Sherry
great.
Thomas.
Oh
yeah. Jessica Sherman, Jen Presser.
you've gotten great people.
Yeah. I've had a lot of really cool people. Lori Records, a bunch of cool people.
Cool.
It's you guys are great, and I'm trying to look out for all you guys.
Oh, it's cool.
Because we take you guys for granted. I think you guys are working just as hard as we are.
The main misconception is, I think many actors, not all actors, but look as casting as kind of somebody blocking them to getting the job. Where the truth is, and I know this is what everybody says, but it's so true. Every actor that auditions, you want to be incredible. You want to get the job because if for the most selfish reasons, it makes your job easier.
Oh, yeah.
So, casting is not the enemy. They're not. And it's just for your friend that can't get in our office, there's just so many actors that they look at us often as the bad guys if they can't get in, but it's the thousands of other actors that are getting in.
Yeah.
It's tough.
For the record, my friend Brandon Stormberger doesn't think of you as an enemy.
Oh, no.
And he would love to come in.
Okay, cool. Well, that's cool. Give me his name when we're done.
Brandon Stormberger. I'll hit you up. But that also reminds me, I had Richard Hicks on. Do you know Richard?
Oh, yeah, he's amazing.
He talked about getting fired from Curb Your Enthusiasm. He did like the first couple seasons, and then they were like, we've wanted to work with this casting director. They became available.
Yeah.
Sorry. And it's like, as actors, we don't think about that, but that's got to be so crushing.
I have been very fortunate, I think, to have never been fired in my career because so many incredible casting directors have been fired. I have replaced many, especially in the past, on when TV was just TV, so much like movies now, but when TV was TV and movies were movies. Movies, there's more of a luxury usually. There's more time. And TV is so fast-paced, so it's a different mindset, a different skill set. That I replaced many great feature casting directors who just weren't able to keep up initially with the... I think what happens on firing casting directors is so much of your job is not just about casting the show. Your job is about keeping a studio, a network, and producers happy. And the second one of those lose any trust in you, you're doomed. And I think that casting directors often become the scapegoat. It's like something isn't going well. Well, let's get rid of the casting director,
Which isn't fair, obviously.
Oh, well, no, it's not fair at all. but it is a reality, and it's always in the back of my mind. I mean, you have no idea how many times I've said, I'm going to get fired, but I, knock on wood, haven't yet.
He knocked on his head for those not watching the video. We're getting to an hour. I have one last question I like to ask everybody is, who took a chance on you? Did somebody take a chance on you that
yes.
really...
Several people. Rob Schiller, the one who took a chance on convincing my life wasn't over at 30.
Oh.
And that there are so many opportunities in show business. And when I do lecture to young kids, I always say, who want to be actors? I say, that's amazing. You've got to, really keep yourself in check, and you have to know you're worthy and keep your confidence up, but always, and have passion, but always keep yourself open to the fact that there are so many jobs on a set that feel the same pride as being an actor. I mean, so many jobs. So anyway, that's that. So Rob Schiller, a guy named Roger Holtzberg, who was a director when I was, Ruben, obviously. Ruben Cannon is my major mentor, and Carol Dudley, who worked with Ruben. They're my two mentors.
They were casting directors?
Yeah, Ruben was the first, kind of the, I don't know if it was the only one at that time, but he was definitely the most famous Black casting director.
Okay.
And he cast Color Purple, and I came onto him right after Color Purple. And then his next job was Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
so
wow.
I did the voices for Frame Roger Rabbit, completely inexperienced because Ruben trusted me. Ruben is the best in the world. And then Carol Dudley was his right-hand person, who was Latin. So I've always said that I think working for a Black and Latin casting director early on, when people weren't as aware of the discrepancies in the business or whatever, made me have a whole knowledge of actors of color that a lot of people wouldn't have had, but I was lucky to work for. So, and then when I was working for Ruben, there was a director, Roger Holtzberg, who had done a little movie, and he insisted on me being the casting director on the next movie, which was called Paint It Black, which was not a success. But so anyway, I was able to kind of be promoted in Ruben's company because of Roger Holtzberg. And then Ruben ended up giving me my first initial series. I don't want to leave anybody out. There's so many. Lori opened it at NBC, who gave two young guys a big break. Pam Dixon, who gave me my first job and kind of mentored me along early on. And then Dean Hargrove, Jerry Sanoff, and Joel Steiger, who worked at Viacom, because they helped Eric and I, because for a while we did Perry Mason, Jake and the Fat Man, Diagnosis Murder, Matlock. We did all those Viacom shows, and they were such mentors, but more, they really gave us the opportunity to get the jobs. So they really got us jobs. And then from then on, I would have to say Ryan Murphy, Eric Kripke, Gail Berman. I mean, there's been so many, and Sharon Klein. Those people are lots. I mean, because they're, I've been doing it for a zillion years.
No, I love it. I love that you immediately thought of so many people, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, wow, that's a lot of chances that were given to you.
Those
and
people
that's a lot.
all took a chance on me, and multiple chances.
And somebody starting out, casting director, actor, if you need that many chances to be, you don't obviously need that many, but that's a lot.
But you do need people that will take a chance on you.
That's why I like that question, yeah.
You do. I mean, you do. And it's all those people that, so I do try to help fellow people that have worked for us. I mean, I'm very good friends with many, many of my associates that have worked with me through the years, and Eric's associates, and I mean, on and on and on. If I can't list one because I'll leave somebody out.
Don't.
I'll leave somebody out. But
the last 10 minutes of this is just you going down.
I know, because the problem is this is not to say that I'm not a great casting director. I think I'm a great casting director. I think I have great taste. I think I do great at the job, but I think I also have been incredibly lucky to get good projects and from good people.
Yeah.
And I work really hard. And in the olden days, I used to say I would work 24 hours a day, and I did, and I still pretty much do.
Yeah, with all the emails you get.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never off. I mean, Gail Berman wrote me not long ago. This is a funny story. She wrote me, it was 4 a.m. And she was emailing me. I was emailing her back. And later, she was in New York, and later although she gets up the crack of dawn, which is why she also gets more done than anybody in the world. But later, I said to her, Gail, did you notice what time I was emailing you? And she said, I noticed, and I was not surprised. So anyway,
You were also taking a call as you walked in here. That's how busy you are. You're talking to like travel arrangements.
Yeah, travel
Not that I was
for somebody from South Africa.
Wow.
On a movie I'm doing, a horror film.
How do you feel? You feel good? This is good?
Oh, great, yeah.
Cool.
I don't think I said anything. When you do these things, you're always so nervous you're going to say something that insults somebody, you leave somebody. It's just impossible to
You're fine.
to not do it.
You did great. I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for doing it. I really
thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
You have to tail slate at the end now.
What do I say?
Well, you guys make us slate all the time. You know how awkward
We just say the name, though.
You know how, that's all you got to say, but you know how awkward slates are?
Horrible. They're horrible.
So now this is me putting it back.
Full body slates when the camera used to go up and down. It's the weirdest
don't even
thing.
get me going. Do you see this wall? That's where I do my self-tapes.
It's
I have to put my phone way back here to get a full
so
body.
insane, but necessary, because
gotta
if
see
you
what
only
they look
see somebody's face, they could look, who knows what they look like.
All right, sorry.
Hi, Robert Ulrich.
Perfect.
Located in Glendale, California.
Perfect. Thank you, buddy.
MTV and the Channel E. A thing for celebrities.
Nothing really.